Well, welcome in, everyone. This is After Further Review, Tiger Vision's weekly college football rundown show. I'm Jay Smith, and alongside Bradley Kendall, we're here to give you a recap on Week 13 college football action and look ahead to the playoff. Rankings just came out about an hour and 15 minutes ago, so let's dive right into it. Bradley, After Further Review.
The Roll Tide tried, but War Damn Eagle. How about the Auburn Tigers? In the words of the radio announcer from last year, Auburn won the football game.
Yeah, it was a great game, but we've got a couple more that we want to look at quickly. Let's dive into an ACC matchup, Miami-Pitt, game that a lot of people weren't paying too much attention to, but Panthers get it done, upset the Canes, first loss for Miami all season. Pretty convincing win for Pittsburgh, too. Miami never really looked like they were in this one.
Absolutely, and going into this, 2 weeks ago I called, I was like, between the Virginia game and the Pittsburgh game, I think one of these two is going to be a trap game for Miami. Turns out both of them were a trap game, and one of them ended up being putting Miami on the losing side. The great part is Pat Narduzzi called this at halftime. He literally said to the announcer at ESPN, hey, we're going to win this game. If you're a Miami fan, that's not what you want to see. You know, they've done this before. This is now the fourth time they've been a unranked team and taken down a top 3 team, so they're a giant killer.
They've done it, each of the last 2 years with Clemson at 2 and then Miami at 2. And you look at the time of possession this game, Pittsburgh dominated, holding on to the ball for 36 and a half minutes. Miami did have a turnover, so you saw the turnover chain come out briefly.
Not enough, though.
But it just wasn't enough, and their offense because that was the thing all season long for Miami was when their defense forced those turnovers and made those big plays, they were able to capitalize on offense. They were able to drive down the field, get those points, and they just weren't able to do that against Pittsburgh, and that's really what was the difference in this game is just the lack of chemistry on offense.
Miami was exposed, and Pittsburgh brought everything out. They went for it on a 4th and 5 to ice the game. They had nothing to lose. I mean,
they were 4 and 7 at the time. I mean, what do you have to lose? Exactly.
So inexcusable loss for Miami. But the great part about college football is losses can be forgiven. This time for Miami, it can be forgiven because they got Clemson coming up with a chance to make the playoffs.
They still got a lot to play for.
You can argue this game doesn't even matter for Miami. I mean, maybe seeding, but other than that, not really anything at all. But they got to fix things. Malik Rozier said he's feeling as healthy as he's been all year. Yeah. I don't know whether to believe that or not, but
we'll find out next week.
Well, let's bring in Evan. I know he's back there in the studio. Evan, what'd you think about this game? Do you feel like this was Miami just not showing up because they were already focused on the ACC championship game, or do you think that Pitt was able to, really play up and past Miami standard?
Well, I watched part of this game mainly because it was about the only football that was on Friday, but I think it was just a combination of factors for Miami in this one. I mean, the fact that it was on the road in Pittsburgh does not bode well for a team that's used to playing football games that are, in 70-degree clear skies. You got to go up to Pitt, and it's freezing temperatures up there. So, it makes the ball a little bit harder and, a little bit.
Don't tell that to Tom Brady.
Yeah, well, depending on how much air is in the ball, I guess. But I think that the fact that Pitt likes to play spoiler, I mean, in their last 4 games against AP top 3 ranked teams, I believe they pulled out the win in each one, beating us last year and coming up with a big win to ruin West Virginia's season a few years ago. So Pitt's kind of used to this stage, and I think Miami probably was looking ahead a little bit 8 days later to
it speaks to Pitt and, as the program with you can never really count them out because they were able to shock Clemson last year. They were the only team that, stood between Clemson and an undefeated not only regular season but an entire season. And they were able to play spoiler to Miami here at the season ending game for them. But we'll go ahead and jump into the next game that we're going to talk about, the game, Michigan-Ohio State. This one was all Wolverines for a while, but the Buckeyes came back. I think this is this 5 in a row now?
Something like that. I don't think Harbaugh maybe has beaten him once. I don't believe he has. But he's got a terrible record against the Big 3 outside of Michigan in the Big 10. It's Ohio State's first 14-point comeback or more against Michigan ever, which I find extremely hard to believe with the history in this rivalry. So kudos to Ohio State. Don't know whether to believe J.T. Barrett's and Urban Meyer's little story about Barrett getting hurt. Usually you see that in a loss. They decided to pull this out in a win. I think it's a little bit fishy there, but we'll move that to another day. But yeah, I mean, Michigan really, John O'Korn coming in. Brandon Peters was their starting quarterback originally, got hurt. O'Korn needs to step in. If you're a Michigan fan, you gotta breathe a sigh of relief that this game's over, and then he can move on to a new season.
Tell you what, the Wolverines are the best 8-4 team in the history of college football. Harbaugh came in, and the expectations were so high at Michigan. They still are high, but with what he's done this year, it's mediocre at best. I mean, an 8-win season for Michigan is nothing spectacular. They want to be contending for conference championships every year. And I think that they have the program recognition and the facilities to do that. I don't know if it's a recruiting issue. I don't know if it's a coaching issue. But right now, Ohio State has Michigan's number, at least in this rivalry game.
Not just them, about half the Big Ten right now.
Yeah, and I mean, you look at Michigan. I'm going to pull up their schedule really quick to see who they've lost to Michigan State this year. Penn State, they were whopped by Penn State. I do remember that game now. And then these past two with Wisconsin and Ohio State. Yeah, that's right. It was a slobber knocker. I don't know, Evan. What do you think? I mean, do you feel like that this is? I mean, because for a lot of people, I remember when Harbaugh got hired, everybody was excited about Meyer versus Harbaugh in the game, and it hasn't lived up to the hype.
I almost feel like Brady Hoke's coaching. I mean, you can't even tell Harbaugh's there.
Yeah,
he hasn't got any attention.
I don't know. There's just not a lot of hype surrounding Michigan right now.
Yeah, looking back at the overall record for this rivalry, Michigan hadn't beaten Ohio State since they played in Ann Arbor in 2011. Wow. And Jim Harbaugh was hired in 2015. So Jim Harbaugh has not beat Ohio State yet. He is
Rich Rod, wasn't it?
over his that would have been the Rich Rodriguez era. So in his first 3 years at the helm at Michigan, he is 0 for 3 against Urban Meyer and the Buckeyes. And they've just been outplayed in all those games. Ohio State has been consistently the better team recently. I mean, Urban Meyer's already got a solid hold on some of that Midwest recruiting. He's been at Ohio State for a few years, so he's got that on Harbaugh. I know Michigan's talking about maybe giving Jim Harbaugh a lifetime contract. I don't think that's a terrible idea, but I think if you're looking for the proof, it's not in the pudding right now. Yeah. I think Michigan's still got some building to do, and it doesn't help that their backup quarterback is worse than I would be in that position. So just a whole lot of factors to contribute for why Ohio State won this game. Michigan had stood a chance, hung in there for a little bit. They were tied at halftime, had the lead for a lot of that second quarter. So I don't know. It was kind of disappointing for Michigan, I guess, to see that potential and then nothing come up.
I think Harbaugh might have to suit up his quarterback next year because I believe Wilton Spade is transferring for his final year of eligibility. So they're going to be searching. McCaffrey's brother plays for Michigan at QB, so you could see that as the answer. But they're searching, that's for sure.
We'll hop over to the SEC now. We'll look at a big upset, the Iron Bowl.
Would you call it an upset, though?
What's that?
Would you call it an upset?
I felt like Auburn had a chance in this game, and I was really rooting for them to beat Bama, but I just felt like that Alabama was going to close in the end. But I was surprised. Auburn gets it done 26-14 over the Crimson Tide, hands Alabama their first loss of the season. Now you've got a lot of people clamoring, saying that Alabama doesn't have a strong strength of schedule. They shouldn't get in the playoff. There's still a lot of football left to be played with these conference championships, but I do think for a two-loss Auburn team, this was a huge win to end the regular season.
Second win against the top-ranked team. This is kind of the nick in the armor for Bama is that they don't have a big win, which is rare to see in the SEC, absolutely. A couple things to take away from this. I think Bama just really couldn't sustain long drives. That was one of the main things that they'd struggle with a lot of the year. Only had 3 third-down conversions. They didn't even have 1 per quarter, which is really alarming. Auburn's defense played up to the challenge. Kerryon Johnson, probably one of the most underrated players in the country. Talking about hit him all year, absolutely dominated Alabama's defensive front. They were really banged up. They had some freshmen starting at linebacker. But, kudos to Auburn. They really were up to the challenge to take down Big Bag Bama.
Yeah, I mean, Dabo said in his press conference today how, when everybody was not really giving Auburn a lot of credit after Clemson beat them early in the year, and now they go and do this to Bama, and everybody's lofting Auburn. I think right now they're second in the College Football Playoff rankings. But he said, he's like, hey, I said this beginning of the year that they're a good team. And, you look at Auburn, they're 10-2. They went 7-1 in conference play. They have the loss to Clemson and then the loss to LSU. Well, the loss to Clemson you can excuse because they are the number 1 team
on the road. 8-point loss.
It was on the road. It's a close game early in the season too.
You play that now, there's definitely more scoring.
And that one loss to LSU, one other loss to LSU is on the road by 4 points. So they didn't really have a bad loss all year. Honestly, when you compare Clemson and Auburn's schedules, Clemson's had a lot of big road games. I think they've beaten 4 teams ranked in the top 25 this year.
First team in the last decade to do that.
Yeah, it's been a while since a team has been able to accomplish that, which is a huge feat. But you look at Auburn, they've got 2 losses. One was to the number 1 team in the country, and then one was to LSU on the road by 4 points, which anybody can attest. That's a difficult environment to go into.
Troy certainly figured it out, taking down LSU.
You're always going to have anomalies because this is college football. But you understand where I'm coming from.
Hey, Auburn's only losses were in Death Valleys. You could say that. So.
Ooh, that's a good point.
Yeah.
I like that.
I got one observation. Evan, I don't know if you have anything to say about this, but where's Bo Scarborough? He had 6 carries this game. Is this not the same guy that pretty much took down Clemson up until he got injured last year in the championship game? I know Damian Harris is good, but Bama scored 14 points. Jalen Hurts can't do it all. What do you think about this?
Yeah, to your point, I think if Bo Scarborough hadn't gone down with that injury in the national championship, you might not be looking at Clemson winning that football game. But even with Damian Harris and Najee Harris and even Josh Jacobs, all 4 of them, they basically split their carries evenly this past week. None of them had double-digit carries, and Jalen Hurts was the team's leading rusher in that game. And I believe he only had 80 yards on the ground, 70. Can't do it all on his own, and a poor game passing for him as well. Auburn just figured it out. They had a terrific game plan. The offensive play calling was perfect, executed phenomenally. Jarrett Stidham had a great game, 21 of 28 for 237 yards. So he didn't quite kill Alabama through the air, but he did what he needed to. And then Kerryon Johnson, absolute workhorse, 30 carries, 104 yards and a touchdown before he went down with an injury. He actually completed more third down passes in that Iron Bowl than Jalen Hurts did. He completed that third and goal pass to Nate Craig Myers.
What a first possession that was to cap that off.
In the first quarter. So I just thought that was an interesting statistic. But Jalen Hurts just could not get the job done on his own. You thought, going into halftime, the score was 10-7 Auburn with that one touchdown, a 36-yard pass to Jerry Jeudy from Jalen Hurts. So you thought, the potential was there. You knew this game was going to be good. You knew it was going to be close, but you thought maybe Alabama just had the tenacity to fight them tooth and nail to the end and come out on top. And then Auburn just completely shut them down with their series of running backs and each of them getting hurt, successively, and somehow figured it out, had the right game plan, and just executed it to perfection.
Yeah, I was impressed that they were able to maintain that. I think it was a 12-point victory for Auburn. But let's go ahead and jump into our last game back from Week 12. We got Clemson, South Carolina. This one was over essentially by halftime.
It was over well before.
A lot of people, including myself, didn't really see this coming. Clemson was up 20-0 at the half.
No, I saw this coming.
Okay.
Yeah.
They finished with a 34-10 win against the Gamecocks. This is their 4th win in a row. It was a big way to cap off the season. They've now gone 11-1 the last 2 years. Clemson's only losses those last 2 years by 1 point, Pitt at home, and then Syracuse by 3 on the road. So you're 2 maybe bad quarters away from having 36-0 the last 3 years in the regular season. And we have come so far from the 5-game winning streak that the Gamecocks had on us back when Spurrier was still around. Clemson's got 4 in a row now, and they looked good in this game.
If you're a janitor right now at Auburn or South Carolina, I feel bad for you. You have to clean up a ton of toilet paper and a lot of trash because there's a lot of trash that got thrown in that field at South Carolina.
Well, there was a lot of trash on the field.
And there was a lot of trash on the field.
They were wearing garnet.
Jake Bentley, 10.6 QBR. If I was on the extra point, I had that whiteboard, I would write #again because it did happen again, and it was ugly. It was really ugly. I think South Carolina's record was just deceiving. I've been saying that all year. They're not 8-4. That's a pretty. Talk about who was it beating the best 8-4 team in the country before?
Michigan.
I think South Carolina might be the worst 8-4 team in the country right now.
What's amazing to me is South Carolina only had 200 total yards of offense.
They had 10 first downs to 27.
I mean, Clemson's defense showed up and showed out. They stifled every attempt South Carolina made with trying to get a drive going, and it took them, I think, until the third quarter to get past the 50-yard line, if I'm not mistaken. I don't recall a drive that Carolina had in the first half where they got past midfield. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't remember one. But, yeah, they had the touchdown late in the fourth quarter with 3 minutes to go. I'm pretty sure we had our second team in by that point.
It was already
so
pretty much a shutout.
It was basically a trash touchdown. They did the field goal earlier in the fourth quarter with 13 minutes left. But overall, this was a dominant performance by Clemson over a rival that has been itching to beat them the last couple of years, especially with how it ended 2 years back, 56-7.
I mean, hey, I said they were overrated, but I'm glad they were ranked because that's a ranked win for Clemson. But you're right, they're just hitting their stride when it matters right now, just like last season. I think Dabo talked it. They're playing championship-level football.
Yep.
Orange Britches probably got a lot to say about that. You had Hunter Renfrow really with breaking out. He had 2 touchdowns, I believe, this game, and he only had 1 the entire year. So that was impressive to see. But, yeah, everything's just clicking on all cylinders. The defense is getting healthy now. Trey Lamar, I believe, is a little banged up. But other than that, they seem pretty healthy. And they look like the top dogs right now, and the playoff rankings justify that.
Yeah, I mean, Evan, what's your thoughts on this game?
Well, I think having South Carolina ranked last week definitely helps our strength of schedule for what it's worth. But like you said, Bradley, I don't think they should have been ranked to start with. Probably one of the more overrated and worst 8-4 teams in the country. I mean, their best win is the season opener against NC State, which was basically a quasi-home game for both teams.
State outgained them completely that game, too, so that was a fluke.
They did. Yeah. They had no business winning that game. But other than that, their other 7 wins on the road at Missouri, home against Louisiana Tech, then they had a cute little 3-game win streak, home against Arkansas, at Tennessee, the dumpster fire that is the Volunteers right now, home against Vandy, and then their last 2 wins were home wins against Florida and Wofford. So they've beaten, 1 winning team all year, 1 bowl-eligible team all year. I mean, they did not they did not deserve to be ranked number 24. Like I said, glad they did for our strength of schedule sake. But according to ESPN, the win probability that they keep track of throughout the game as far as which team is favored, the lowest point Clemson had to win this game, they were favored throughout starting and ending the game. Their lowest percentage chance to win this game at any point was 81.6%. Wow. And that was on 3rd and 14 at the South Carolina 49-yard line with 8 minutes left in the first quarter. So according to ESPN, there was no chance South Carolina was ever going to win this game. And if you watch Jake Bentley take a snap, you would understand why.
Maybe it was a deer in headlights.
I mean, I do think there was an opportunity, though, for South Carolina to come out here and make a statement. I mean, if it had been an entertaining game, I think a lot of people would have been like, okay, the Gamecocks.
Yeah, I mean, once Dabo got flagged, they easily could have rallied behind him.
Yeah, no, I mean, and I will say this. The student section for Carolina hung around a lot longer than the lower deck because the bowl was empty about end of the third quarter, and the students really didn't file out of there until about midway through the fourth.
Well, they're a bunch of drunk students. They didn't have any recollection of what the time was on the clock.
Still, though, like I say, the fans were out of there pretty early on. I don't know. Like I say, though, this is the fourth win in a row for Clemson over South Carolina. It was a really impressive win overall, and I think Dabo's got to be pleased with his guys and where they're at going into the postseason. But let's jump over now to some of the coaching carousel news that's been rolling around. It has been a wild couple of days on that front.
To say the least.
We've got Mike Gundy possibly going to Tennessee. We've got
Peyton Manning's jumping in now.
Peyton Manning. We've got Dan Mullen going to Florida. We've got Chip Kelly going to UCLA. Where do we start in all the madness?
Start with Dan Mullen, the one that kind of was the no-brainer. I mean, it seemed like a lot of people were predicting this from the very beginning, and he got locked up pretty quick.
$6 million a year for 6 years.
$6 million a year, 6 years. That's a lot of faith, but he has proven it at a school where there's not a lot of talent.
That's about to pay him $12 million to buy him out.
Yeah, it's a mediocre school in terms of the SEC. I think Mississippi State.
Is it? I mean, is that? Well, you remember now.
He did a lot with little.
2 or 3 years. Was it 2 years ago when the first rankings came out?
Dak Prescott.
Or 3. They were number 1.
Dak Prescott.
So is switching from Mississippi State, I guess I got to pose the question to both of you, is going from Mississippi State to Florida, where he's had success in Mississippi State, he's had him ranked number 1 in the country for a while, is it an upgrade? Is it that much of an upgrade?
Well, remember, let's not forget, he was at Florida back in 2005 when Tebow was there. And he generated one of the top offenses in the country at that time. So he's had experience there. I think that was the move that really triggered his desire to go there. Yeah. Mississippi State, though, before he was there, let's think, they weren't really very relevant. So I think it's safe to say they were pretty mediocre at the time. So he did a lot with little and brought them to number 1. Obviously, that season didn't end the way they wanted it to. Yep. I think Florida's still a big job, and it was tough to pass up for him.
I don't know. What do you think, Evan?
I'm going to agree with Bradley on this one. I think this is a home run smart hire for Florida, and I think for Dan Mullen it just makes a logistical sense. I mean, like you said, he has history at Florida being the offensive coordinator and quarterback coach from 2005 to 2008 when Tim Tebow was playing as arguably the best college quarterback ever. And Dan Mullen's kind of got this reputation as the quarterback whisperer. He takes these guys that aren't on many people's radar and then turns them into something special, like Dak Prescott and even Nick Fitzgerald this year at Mississippi State. Both of those guys passed up on in recruiting, and exactly. And just a lot of people not impressed with either of those guys coming out of high school, and you have Dak Prescott starting in the NFL as a rookie and Nick Fitzgerald, who's having a great year, and they probably would have won the Egg Bowl and made a decent bowl game if he hadn't gotten hurt against Ole Miss. So I think this is a smart hire for Florida. I think they need a guy like Dan Mullen, just a real solid guy, relatively young, so he has the potential to stick around for a while. He's got that experience. He's worked with Urban Meyer, one of the best college coaches in the country right now. So I think this move has the potential to be a really, really good hire for both sides, but especially for Florida, who desperately needs somebody to come in there and clean up whatever Jim McElwain messed up.
And Mississippi State's in pretty good hands. I heard, Jeremy Pruitt from Alabama is now their number one target now to be the head coach at Mississippi State. So they're left in pretty good hands. Mullen took after Spurrier with the visor, so you can bring your visor back out next Halloween and be Dan Mullen if you want.
There you go.
I think it's a good hire. I like it.
Well, we'll look at Chip Kelly. This one, a lot of people have their eyes on. He's going to UCLA. He's got a 5-year contract valued at $23.3 million. At Oregon, his tenure at Oregon, he went 46-7, and he was 33-3 in conference play in the Pac-12. Possibly the most impressive statistic from Chip Kelly's tenure, though, He was top 15 in every single one of his recruiting
I'd
classes.
argue even the most impressive stat was his defense in 2012. He was second, and I think throughout the course of his entire 4 years there, he maintained
2012, was that the year that they played Auburn in the championship?
They played him in 2010, but close, yeah. But yeah, I mean, overall, he was a very good defensive coach too, offensive mastermind. Didn't work out too well in the NFL, but he's back now in college. UCLA, they went all in. They had nothing to lose here. Jim Moore, obviously, they moved on from him. I mean, he was their number one target on their radar, and you saw with Florida, it was kind of back and forth between UCLA and Florida. They just went with Dan Mullen. Pretty good backup plan instead of Chip Kelly. So I like the move. I think he's going to succeed really well. He loves the West Coast. He knows what to do. Should be an interesting homecoming with Oregon.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like this was a smart decision by UCLA. I mean,
for both parties.
I mean, he proved that he can take a team and, especially on the offensive side of the ball, develop him into he, in a lot of ways, created a whole different, with the whole no huddle and how fast Oregon played. I mean, you remember 5-6 years ago when Clemson was more of a no huddle offense with Taj Boyd. Like, Oregon was even faster than that. I mean, it was lightning quick speed, and Kelly really perfected that. And obviously, like you said, it didn't translate well into the NFL.
I think he did a fairly decent job. He didn't do terrible, but
but it never really caught on like people.
Now, let's not forget that when he came into Oregon, this was kind of a new concept. No one ran this no-huddle quick offense.
He essentially invented that.
You could say that Pac-12 defenses have adjusted a little bit, so he may not be as effective. That record may be a little bit skewed in terms of what he might do at UCLA. But I think he's going to do well. I have full faith in him to bring him back.
Well, what's interesting, Troy Aikman, the former UCLA quarterback, called Kelly the, quote, greatest hire in UCLA history. So obviously there's a lot of guys who feel like that Kelly's going to do great things.
Are we going to act like John Wooden wasn't the basketball coach there for forever?
Yeah, I mean, how many championships did Wooden win? He won 9 or 10
He won 10 out of 12. Yeah,
10 out of 12?
They may not have thought high of him when he was originally there, like Coach K at Duke.
You got to remember who said that, though. That's Troy Aikman.
That's
and Troy Aikman and Joe Buck, you listen to them for long enough, you lose brain cells.
Stick to the NFL, Troy.
So, but I mean, Evan, do you agree? You feel like this is a smart hire for UCLA?
I think it has the potential to be a really smart hire. On my coaching carousel list that I've got back here, I highlighted the moves that I thought were good in green. So I've got Dan Mullen to Florida highlighted in green, and then the potential Scott Frost to Nebraska move, which we'll probably discuss here in a minute. I got that in green as well. Yep. Chip Kelly to UCLA, I've got in yellow because this has the potential to go really, really well or the potential to go really, really poorly. I think Chip Kelly is obviously a Pac-12 guy. His coaching obviously did not translate well to the NFL, as we saw with the Niners and the Eagles. Just crashed and burned with both of those teams. But I think in the Pac-12, he's got the recruiting and he's got the athletes to make his system work. And people forget, it seemed like he was at Oregon for forever. He was only there for 4 years.
Yeah.
And in his first year, they beat number 5 USC, and he became the first Pac-10, or at the time, I guess Pac-10, Pac-12 now, coach to win an outright conference championship in his first season. And Oregon went to the Rose Bowl, and they ended up getting dominated by Ohio State. But in his first year as full-time head coach, after Mike Bellotti got promoted to athletic director, he was named coach of the year, and like I said, won the Pac-10 and made it to the Rose Bowl. So he's one of these guys that I think can come in and make an immediate difference and an immediate impact. He's got the talent and he's got the exposure in LA that he's going to need. So I think this move has the potential to be really, really good. But again, it's Chip Kelly, and his recent history shows that he did not do as well of a job at some of his more recent locations as we wanted him to. So that's why I think this has the potential to not turn out as well as UCLA hopes. But I think this could end up being a really, really good move.
Well, I just want to point out real quick, he did come in when USC was on the decline, and the Pac-12 was kind of a one-man show. Oregon became that top dog. So they got a lot of good teams now in the conference.
Well, Stanford had Oregon's number for a while.
That's true, but there's a lot of teams that they're going to compete with UCLA once he gets there. And two, he's going to need to have, you speak of basketball, he's going to need to have that Lonzo Ball. He had Marcus Mariota, and he was the guy like Deshaun Watson that kind of really brought the program to national fruition. I think they're going to need that kind of recruit, like a Josh Rosen. Unfortunately, he's leaving. But in order for this system to work, I think he's really going to need that really good quarterback.
Well, it was interesting. When he was at the Eagles, a lot of the players insinuated that he was kind of difficult to deal with, and that he was very his way or the highway. I think that's easier to push in college because you have so much influence on the guy, and they really are still kids when they get there at 18, 19 years old, versus professional football where you're dealing with 25, 26, 27-year-olds. So I don't know. I mean, obviously what he did at Oregon worked. He had a lot of success there, got him to a national championship game even though they lost. He's tried the NFL now for a few years. It's been moderately successful, but, we could sit here and have a whole hour-long discussion about coaching carousel. There's so much to talk about on this front, but we have to get into the playoff, what everybody's waiting to talk about now. Rankings came out about an hour and a half ago, and we will start at the top, I guess is how we're going to structure this. We got Clemson at number 1, Auburn at 2, Oklahoma at 3, Wisconsin 4, Alabama 5, Georgia 6, Miami 7, Ohio State 8, Penn State 9, USC 10. That's your top 10. Anything with a week left, you still got conference championships. And I was listening to the WCCP on the way over here, and somebody was calling into the Road Rage, and they were like,
I don't even want to hear about that show right now.
They were like, why don't we have 18 playoff? Why don't we have an 18 playoff? And Walt was like, look, you've got essentially elimination games with these conference championships, because you've got 1 playing 7. You've got 6 playing 2, and you've got 4 playing 8, and actually
3 playing 11.
3 playing 11. So you basically have those elimination games in place.
Yeah, and if you watered it down, you can have 8 teams. Auburn could lose and still make it in. So it's there's not a lot of pressure there if you have 8 teams.
I mean, but looking at the top 10, is there anything that you felt like the committee got wrong? I kind of like where everybody's at.
I had Wisconsin at 3. I think they deserve a little bit more respect, finishing the entire season undefeated. I think despite
regular season.
Despite the fact that Auburn's playing well, and they've obviously knocked off 2 top teams in the country right now, and they're playing probably one of the hottest teams right now in the country. I still think with 2 losses, you got to put Wisconsin ahead of them. I think an undefeated team and a 1-loss team, yes, I can see that jump happening to have a 1-loss team up there, but a 2-loss team, I know they were the good teams, but I think you still have to put Wisconsin ahead of Auburn right now. Now, Auburn could very well beat Georgia.
Do you have Auburn at 2?
I had Auburn at 4. I had Oklahoma up at 2.
Oh.
I just think right now they got the Heisman Trophy winner. The 1 loss they have is to Iowa State. If we're going to say losses are excusable and it matters about wins, Oklahoma's
where was Louisville ranked last year when Lamar? I don't know, Evan, you might be able to pull this up since you're in the back on the computer, but where was Louisville ranked when Lamar won the Heisman last year?
17.
Were they 17th? I don't know. We get to that in a second.
I'll look it up
for
you.
But, for me, with Auburn, they have the 2 losses, like we've touched on. One's to Clemson, one's to LSU. Oklahoma's 1 loss was by a touchdown to Iowa State, and Wisconsin's undefeated. And I know Landon's listening. I feel like Wisconsin deserves the benefit of the doubt, like you said, because they went undefeated in the regular season. Now, they have a huge test this weekend against Ohio State. Huge. If they can get past that hurdle, they are definitely deserving of getting in the playoff. And personally, I think they should be ranked 3rd or 2nd. I think at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter who's 2 or 3.
It doesn't.
I think 1 and 4 are the biggest because, not to say that the 1 team is going to have an advantage on the 4 team, but it is my understanding that the 1 seed gets to pick if they're playing in the Sugar Bowl or the Rose Bowl. So there is some benefit to that. But I think realistically, these 4 teams will win their conference championships and get into the playoff. I think Alabama is going to get left out.
I disagree slightly. I think Georgia ends up taking out Auburn. We'll get into that later. I think it's just too tough to beat a team 2 times in a row. Now, that being said, Oklahoma does play TCU again. But I think the difference between TCU and Auburn and Georgia are pretty severe. Now, that being said, I do think TCU got a little bit disrespected here. I don't think they should have been left out of the top 10. I think if you take a 2-loss Big 12 champ that takes down Oklahoma, who's number 3 right now currently, they should at least be in the conversation to make a playoff. And looking at their ranking now at 11, it doesn't seem that way. Another observation I had, Ohio State at 8. I don't think right now, if you have them at 8, I don't think there's any way they can make the jump at all in the top 4. There's no possible scenario, even if you have some conferences implode, some unexpected wins and losses. I don't think even
if the loss to Iowa just stands out. It was on the road, but it was a bad. Clemson had a bad loss to Syracuse.
By 3 points.
What's Syracuse rank at the end of the year? 4 and 8.
4 and 8, yeah.
Man, that's terrible.
5 and 7, maybe.
Ohio State lost 55-24 to an Iowa team that is they've contended in some good games, but I still think with it was a blowout fashion loss, and so that's the reason that they've put them so far down.
Alabama would not let up 55 points to Iowa. There's no way. No chance.
No.
And that right there is all you need to know.
I don't think Clemson would let up 55 points to Iowa. I don't think Miami would. I don't think Georgia would.
I think every single top 7 team outside of maybe Miami would get in even with a loss this week instead of Ohio State. I don't care what happens. I think even with a loss, Clemson lost, I still think they would get in. Even if Auburn lost,
you think Ohio State would?
No. I think if any of the top 7, maybe not including Miami, lost, I still think they would deserve to get in above Ohio State right now. I don't think Ohio State has any chance.
So you think So you're saying from 8 down, is that because we know Penn State and USC and TCU are making
done.
it?
They're
So
done.
you're saying there's realistically 7 teams who still have a chance, but you're not confident on Miami?
No, I'm not too confident, no, especially after that pick game. I just think that Notre Dame
game was kind of a one-hit wonder.
Finally gives him a reason to be like, nah, Miami.
Yeah, I've been waiting all year for you to finally change your mind.
Yeah, I mean, well, here's the thing. They lost a game. Same, kind of deal as Clemson. Lost a game to Syracuse.
Last game of the year, though.
It was the last game of the year. It hurts, but they have great wins against Virginia Tech and a dominating win against Notre Dame. You can argue all you want about Notre Dame till you're blue in the face. But at the end of the day, they went 10-1, because they had the game canceled. If they beat Clemson in the ACC championship, a Clemson team that beat Auburn, who is currently ranked 2nd and may be ranked 1st if they win the SEC championship, because we know how much everybody loves the SEC, I think you're going to have to move Miami. You're going to leapfrog them over Georgia. You're going to leapfrog them over Alabama, and you're going to put them in the top 4.
Yeah, they get in. Because Clemson's number 1 convincingly, and the committee loves them. If Miami's able to take them down, you can excuse that big game right away.
Evan, did we ever figure out where Louisville was ranked?
We sure did. You want the AP, the coaches poll, or the college football playoff?
Playoff poll.
So Louisville, in the initial college football playoff poll last year, they were ranked number 7. Week after that, made it up to 6. Week after that, made it up to 5. Then they lost, made it down to 11. Mm-hmm. And then the last 2 weeks in the playoff poll, they were at 13. So they finished the year ranked 13th. Okay. They played number 20 LSU in the Citrus Bowl.
Oh, they got beat pretty bad.
And they got blown out. That
did.
score was 29-9.
29-9.
And Lamar Jackson was 10 of 27 for 153 yards, 26 carries, 33 yards, 0 touchdowns responsible for. So
26 carries?
He deserved
26
the Heisman.
carries,
He still deserved the Heisman.
33 yards.
Still deserved the Heisman. We
still did. That's darn right.
No one's talking about that. He has better stats. He's leading the ACC in almost every major category.
Never was a Lamar fan.
I Lamar.
No,
yeah, if you want his stats for this year compared to last year, I got those pulled up too.
Those up.
As of right now, so last year he finished with a little over 3,500 yards through the air, 30 touchdowns, 9 picks. He had 260 carries for 1,500 yards and 21 touchdowns. This year he's knocking on the door of 3,500 yards, 25 touchdowns, 6 picks, 1,400 yards on 208 carries and 17 touchdowns. So almost
So he's
the exact same
responsible
numbers.
for fewer touchdowns this year. He was responsible for, I believe you said 51 last year?
30 passing touchdowns, 21 rushing. That was last year. This year,
51.
25 and 17.
So a few less.
Right, with still a bowl game left to play.
Still a bowl game left.
But he's not going to account for 10-plus touchdowns in one bowl game.
No, I mean, he's a heck of a player, and he's had 2 great years.
Absolutely.
But,
his quarterback rating this year so far is 3 points higher than it was at the end of last year, for what that's worth.
I felt like McCaffrey was deserved, but we won't have to get into that. That's a whole another discussion. We're here to talk about the playoff. I mean, Evan, do you feel like there's any chance for? I think what's more interesting is looking at Alabama and. I guess Ohio's, well, no, they're playing in their conference championship. I guess Alabama, because if I'm correct, Alabama is the only team in the top 8 that's not playing in a conference championship this weekend.
You would be correct in saying that Clemson at number 1, ACC championship, Auburn, SEC, Oklahoma Big 12, Wisconsin Big 10. Then you got Bama sitting at 5, who's going to be at home next weekend, not at home in Bryant-Denny Stadium, but on their couch. Georgia at 6, Miami at 7, Ohio State at 8. So, yes, the only team in the top 8 not playing for a conference championship. But in my opinion, they are still very much alive in this playoff conversation. I think they've got a pretty solid chance still of getting in. They just need a decent amount of help. I mean, the way I look at it, they're in the same position as Ohio State was at this point last year, and they're a better team than Ohio State was and is this year as well. So I think if Alabama just had the right set of circumstances happen, then they're very easily in. And the right set of circumstances, I don't think the ACC championship matters as much to them, but if I'm them, I'm pulling for Miami, I guess. SEC championship, winner of that gets in regardless, in my mind. Yeah. Now, I think it's going to come down to the Big 10 and the Big 12. I think if I'm Alabama, I'm pulling for TCU, and I'm pulling for Yeah, you think Ohio State? Because I think if Ohio State wins the Big Ten, then they got a good reason to be in. I'm pulling for Wisconsin.
No, I think Bama gets in above Ohio State, like he said.
I don't know. I think that would be a tough call.
Yeah.
Because I don't know.
I don't know. Well, we might have time for a couple of call-ins. I think we have a couple people standing by. We'll see if the phone buzzes. But, yeah, I mean, like I said, we've got one more week of rankings. We got a call right now. We'll go ahead and put him on speaker.
All right, Austin, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, cool. All right, what's your question, buddy?
I was just wondering what you guys thought what bowl game you guys thought the Gamecocks were gonna play in.
Okay.
Oh, what bowl game the Gamecocks are going to play in? Well, let's see. They're 8-4. They're second in the SEC East.
I believe second in the SEC East. Yeah, they're up there
Yeah.
8-4. Let's see. I'm thinking I think they'll get a little bit higher than the Belk Bowl. I'm trying to think of SEC teams where they go. Maybe down south somewhere in Florida. I know they have like that Miami Bowl. They have like the Gator Bowl. I believe they can get in.
Yeah, I saw the TaxSlayer.com Gator Bowl was there. The representatives were at the Clemson-Carolina game this past Saturday, so I think that may be where they end up.
This article on SB Nation that was posted an hour ago projects them to play in the Outback Bowl in Tampa, Florida against Michigan State.
And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the Outback Bowl was the last time they played in that was when they played Michigan, and that's when Mr. Jadeveon Clowney almost killed
the guy's head off.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's a respectable bowl. I feel like going to the Outback Bowl down in Tampa, some good weather. So that's like at least something to enjoy.
Yeah, you've got College Football News putting Carolina. I don't know if somebody mentioned this, putting them in the Outback Bowl against Michigan. I heard somebody say Michigan State.
Yeah, Michigan State. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think they'll get to a decent bowl game. I do feel like USC and the Outback Bowl's becoming kind of synonymous.
USA Today has them playing Michigan State, but this time in the Citrus Bowl instead of the Outback.
Okay.
The Outback Bowl, they got Michigan LSU.
So it looks like, Austin, if you're trying to go to a South Carolina bowl game, I would leave Charlotte. I would head down south to somewhere in Florida.
Yeah, sunny Florida.
Enjoy yourself.
Not a bad place to be around Christmas time.
Not a bad place. Go recover from that Clemson game. That'll be a nice place to do it. So,
so not the Rose Bowl or the Sugar Bowl?
No, I think, those are the playoff semifinal games for this year, so
I tell you what, a team from South Carolina will make it there.
Yeah.
Not the South Carolina Gamecocks.
Odds are the Gamecocks won't be in the playoff for a while, but I like Will Muschamp as a coach. I think y'all are getting better. You've obviously progressed a lot since 2 years ago with the 3-9 season, so I really don't feel like you should be too disappointed with an 8-4 year. And I mean, at the end of the day, it's going to take some time, and you saw how long it took Dabo to build Clemson into a nationally consistent program. So I really don't think it's any reason to get too discouraged.
Hey, I mean, if it keeps going up here, you went from 6 wins to 8 wins, and you go up to 9 now, and even 10 next year. So
10-win year next year would be big for Carolina. That would be really big.
I mean, especially in a pretty vulnerable SEC East right now. I think they have a good chance to make some strides going forward. So appreciate the call, Austin. Thank you for tuning in.
Yep.
All right, man.
We may have another caller or two. Not exactly sure if we got people on the lines. But, yeah, like I said, I think at this point we're going to try and do a show a little bit later this week with Evan, maybe Thursday evening, and do a pick-em for the conference championships, kind of dive into the matchups, go in depth a little bit for about half an hour or so. We'll probably highlight the ACC, the Big Ten, the Big 12, and the SEC games. As you can see, we got them lined up. We got another caller. Let's go ahead and take him.
All right, got the father on the line. What's going on, Dad?
All right. I'm here. I have a question for you guys.
Okay.
All right, the scenario is Clemson wins, Auburn wins,
They're in.
TCU wins,
Okay.
Wisconsin wins.
Okay.
Who's done the best coaching job this year?
So if all 4 of those teams win, who has done the best coaching job?
Coaching job.
Yes.
Gus Malzahn
I
at
say
Auburn.
Gus Malzahn.
Yeah.
He goes from hot seat to hot rod down the playoff highway.
So
As a two-loss team.
Auburn started number 12 in the polls, and TCU was 27.
Auburn started where?
12.
I think 12.
Yep.
Yeah,
Clemson started top 10,
I will
correct?
say, if you want to talk about a bounce back from last year, TCU was, I believe, 6-7 or 6-6, somewhere along there last year. So to come back from that and to really reignite Kenny Hill's career, I think that's impressive. I mean, Gary Patterson's always been a great coach, so I feel like regardless of the job he does, he's always going to be up there in the Coach of the Year ballot. I think it would be between those two, but Paul Chryst, I mean, that's tough. I don't think Dabo would get it just because of what happened last year. I still think I would go Gus Malzahn just because people were calling for his head earlier this year. And the job he's done to bring this team back.
Although the argument could be made for Paul Chryst, though. I mean, you lead Wisconsin through that rugged Big Ten, undefeated, win the championship, make it to the playoff, and then once they get there, who knows what could happen with that defense they got going. So you figure if Wisconsin makes a playoff push and potentially makes it to the national championship game, you got to give Paul Chryst some props.
Yeah, I mean, I would have to agree with Evan there with Wisconsin. It would be impressive to get through the Big Ten. I think we may have another caller, so we may have to cut off Bradley's dad. We'll just have to hang tight for right now. But, yeah, I mean, I think really Dabo we've seen as a proven winner. You know, he touched on Clemson, I think, with them winning in his scenario. And then he had TCU winning, and he had
Wisconsin,
Auburn, Clemson.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I feel like Gus Malzahn, though, is another good choice because of the fact that a year ago he was on the hot seat, but he's done so well this year in getting Auburn back. And the fact that he's able to beat Bama, the fact that he's able to contend against Bama in the Iron Bowl year in, year out is huge job security for him.
Yeah, I mean, you could even argue that. I know Mark Richt just won. I know even if he doesn't win it, he just won ACC Coach of the Year, and even Kirby Smart at Georgia. So even teams that don't make the playoff, I think you could still look on the outside in and look at those two coaches as potential candidates too. So appreciate the question, Dad.
You guys have a good time.
All right,
Thanks.
thank you.
Hey, real quickly before you take the next call, I'm just looking at some bowl projections on ESPN. I think this is pretty interesting. David Hale, right now, his projection, he's got Clemson and Auburn in the national championship game.
Wow.
How fun would that be?
That would be.
I'd even, honestly, you could even go out on a limb and say if Alabama squeezes in somehow, how about an Iron Bowl national championship? I'd like to see that.
Or Alabama Clemson round
I don't
3.
know. I
Or
really,
round 3.
I wouldn't want to see a national champion. This is something that Jeff Scott mentioned on his press conference Monday about how the Clemson is kind of getting, I don't want to say bored, but they feel like they're getting a lot of rematches in postseason play.
Yeah.
They've played a lot of teams. They played Oklahoma a couple years in a row, I believe. They played Alabama in the championship game last 2 years in a row. I think they've played Ohio State now a couple of times.
You go back to the bowl game a couple
31-0 last year,
Yeah.
and they played them in the Orange Bowl 2 years ago, 3
There
years
you
ago,
go.
something like that.
There
But
you
you're
go.
getting variety this year. I'm loving the turnover you're having with some of the teams. I mean, Ohio State and Penn State taking a
But
step
I
back.
wouldn't, yeah, like I said, I wouldn't want to see a matchup in the championship game that you've already seen, or like even if it was within a conference. I wouldn't be a proponent of that.
All right, we got one more caller. I believe Mark is on the line, ready to go, so we'll get him squared away.
Okay.
This is an Alabama comment, I can guarantee.
Hello.
What's up, Mark?
What's going on?
Hey, buddy, what you got?
All right, so I'm a big Alabama fan. I just want
We
to say
know that
one time.
full well. Yep.
Hey, but I told you I knew we were gonna lose that game
Yeah.
because entering Saturday, Nick Saban at LSU and Alabama is 0-6 against top 10 Auburn teams.
I saw that.
Wow.
Yeah, that is incredible.
Now, how many games is that? Is that 0-6?
0-6.
Oh, 0-6. Okay, I didn't hear that
0-6.
part. 0-6.
With the loss Saturday, that makes 0-7. Top 10 Auburn teams are Nick Saban's kryptonite.
So it's
That's
not just dual threat
interesting.
quarterbacks now. It's just straight Auburn teams now. That's incredible.
It's
Wow.
just straight Auburn teams.
Yeah.
It was crazy. When I saw that stat, I was like, oh, no, this is not going to be good.
So you know this going into it. Yeah, you almost kind of predicted it going forward.
Yeah, but I mean, you look at Alabama this whole month of November. They've had a bit of a drop off. I mean, their scoring average was cut in half. They were averaging 47 points a game, and now it is down to 23. And opponents' scoring it tripled. It went from 7 points a game to 20. So they had the Mississippi State game that they barely scraped by, and a lot of people were like, "Ooh, Alabama all of a sudden looks beatable." Obviously, Auburn was able to put the recipe together to beat them this past week. But I feel like more or less this has been people have been able to see this for a while. Because in years past, Bama's always been viewed as an unbeatable juggernaut that nobody could take down. I feel like that. It's kind of changed a little bit this year, especially in the last month. I don't know, Mark. Do you agree?
No, I would completely agree with that because both of our top linebackers both went out. So
Yeah.
you take your two, Sean Dion Hamilton, who is a fifth-year senior, and Mac Wilson, who's a sophomore, who's at we always have that one middle linebacker guy that is always the go-to, the quarterback of the defense, and both of those guys went out. And as soon as I saw those guys go out in the Mississippi State game, I was like, "Yep, this is not going to be good."
Yeah.
So,
well, I mean, you
just
could look at though. I mean, Bama in the past has been able to get past a loss. It's only taken some magical years by Auburn. You got Cam Newton, Prayer, Jordan Hare, those kind of seasons. Now this year, coming back from the dead after 2 losses, so it's taking those kind of years to take down Bama. So that's both a testament to Auburn. And
Well, it's a testament to that rivalry and how much that rivalry game means every year, where literally you have a berth in the playoff or a conference championship berth on the line year in, year out.
Well, yeah, and like that's kind of like one of those big things is like, it was South Carolina and Clemson. Like y'all see, for the past couple of years, it's had, South Carolina's nowhere near as good as Clemson has been the past 4 years. But, with Auburn and Alabama, it's always been, who's going to play for that crystal football,
right,
or who's going to make it in the top 4. So it's always like I went down to the Iron Bowl last year, and just the feeling you get when you walk into one of those games is unreal.
It's crazy. I mean, like we were saying before, it could still happen again. I mean, if chaos ensues, we could see Auburn, Alabama in a national championship, which is crazy to think about. I'm sure you need to visit a doctor after that game because you definitely have a heart attack midway through. Yeah.
I want to say I saw some stat. It may be wrong, but I thought I saw something that said the winner of the last 9 Iron Bowls has gone on to play in either a semifinal game or the national championship game. So I think that basically encompasses the importance of the Iron Bowl every year.
That's great.
It's a great game. I look forward to watching it every year. But I appreciate the call, Mark.
All right, y'all boys take it easy.
Yeah,
man.
man. You too. Thanks.
All right.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I say, there's still a week left of football, so the Tide may find a way to roll in, but I think right now they're definitely on the outside. But you've got a lot of good games this weekend. I don't know, Evan, you got any closing thoughts?
You better hope either Auburn wins the SEC or Alabama sneaks into the playoff. Otherwise, the streak of the Iron Bowl winner playing in the national championship game is going to be in jeopardy. They have done so every year since the 2008 season. That was Florida, Oklahoma in that game, but so Alabama, Texas in 2009 or 2010.
So that is a confirmed 9-year streak?
Yes, because in the playoff era, Alabama has played in the national championship every year and won it twice.
Well, they got beat by Ohio State, so I think it just means make the playoff. Because
maybe it's make the national championship game.
Yeah,
right,
play in the national championship game because you got Auburn that played in the last BCS national championship game in the 2013 season. They lost to Florida State. Year before that, Alabama blew out Notre Dame. Year before that, Alabama blanked LSU 21-0. Year before that, Auburn beat Oregon. Year before that, Alabama beat Texas, and then the year before that was that Florida-Oklahoma national championship. So there's a good chance the winner of the Iron Bowl wins the national championship, but they definitely make it there every year since 2009.
I don't know. We might see Auburn, if they're able to get it done against Georgia, get in the playoff. I like their chances in a semifinal game, and honestly, the fact that Clemson has been able to get to 2 playoffs and make it through 2 semifinal games without a loss, it would be extremely impressive if they were able to do that 3 out of 3 times. A lot of football left to be played, though. I think that's going to pretty much wrap it up for this edition of After Further Review. We look forward to you joining us Thursday evening. Should be about the same time, maybe a little bit later, 8:30, where we're going to preview the conference championships for this upcoming weekend. As always, we appreciate you joining us. Thanks to Evan in the back. We had Scout running Switcher, Ryan back there at audio.